This podcast is separate from my role as an attorney. However, it is my job to educate, entertain, and teach, and to put it in context for you. Have you heard about the new season of Monsters coming out?
You answer the question?
Yes.
Okay, is you telling Lyle what?
My dad had been molesting me.
Prosecutors emphatically rejected their claims of abuse, arguing that their father, a prominent record executive, was not the kind of man who would be abusing his sons, telling the jury their cousin, who corroborated their claims, was lying in no uncertain terms. But on Wednesday, attorneys for the Menendez brothers filed a writ of habeas corpus in a Los Angeles court, saying that this new evidence by the Menudo band member, along with a resurfaced letter written by Eric Menendez to his cousin 8 months before the murders, backs up their claims of abuse. In that letter, Eric writes, "It's still happening, but it's worse for me now. Every night I stay up thinking he might come in."
The first piece of evidence is the letter, and the second piece of evidence is a new victim who's coming out and says that I was also molested or abused by their father, who was this prominent who was this prominent, entertainment business type of person. Who is this third person? I don't know. But he's now come out and is claiming. Now we're going back and forth. But the title of the Netflix show is Monsters. So now, do we have more information since even this video that points to these two being monsters? All right, let's take a look at this.
If you thought the Dahmer story wrecked your nerves, then wait until you hear about the second season of Monster, coming soon on Netflix with its heinous crimes. Monster, the Jeffrey Dahmer story, completely shook the world last year, but it was also really well received, to an extent that it was trending on Netflix for weeks. It even reached 1 billion views within 60 days, and this is what made the creators realize this is the kind of show that actually has a lot of potential, and they could turn the Monster series into an anthology of crime and punishment. So the creators decided to move forward with the show and come up with another real-life story of two brothers who did something that most people can't even think about. It's the story of Lyle and Eric Menendez.
Lyle and Eric Menendez. So the Jeffrey Dahmer one, have you seen it? It's really, really good. That actor is amazing. I mean, it is just so eerie. He's so dedicated. I was watching an interview and he said that he would walk around with weights, just straight arms to his side and carry weights because he watched footage of Jeffrey Dahmer, and Jeffrey Dahmer is very rigid. Very to a side military type of posture. You can really see that during the show. But now we're going to have a whole new story. So same producers, same creators, different story, which is exciting because they did a good job. They did a really good job with the Jeffrey Dahmer. That was huge. I think you just saw 1 billion views. This is, and it just had a great cast altogether. There was other actors that were in that, the Jeffrey Dahmer one that was just did a great job. So I think, all the actors did. But anyways, these two, the story for these two, yeah, I'm super excited to watch, and hopefully it's just as entertaining. Let's take a look.
We'll probably see José struggling to make a living in the US after immigrating from Cabo, but how he ends up becoming...
From what? From Cabo? I think they meant Cuba. They're saying that it's going to have some background on Kitty Louise, which we didn't really hear much about on the Wikipedia page, so that's going to be interesting.
He was trying to kickstart a new career in the movies, and he was making a good name for himself. Besides, the Menendez family was even living in one of the most posh areas of Beverly Hills, and their house was once the residence of stars like Michael Jackson.
That's where they got the money. Yes. And the kids got that money and started spending it like it was going out of style.
So it looked like their luck was on their side, but that was only the beginning of a much bigger destruction. We'll see José as the kind of father who drives passion into his children and doesn't give them the choice to be unsuccessful. Lyle, the son of José Menendez, will probably be portrayed by an athletic actor in the show, as Lyle was a tennis player in reality, and he played really well. But the odd thing is that according to public records, Lyle was somewhat of a daddy's pet, and he used to be so obedient to his father that people gave his examples. Eric was less than a champion, as he also...
His examples. So they're saying that they committed the murders because they lost confidence? That sounds weird. I hope there's more to it than that, right? If you are saying that there is sexual abuse going on, now how proximate is that sexual abuse? Is it very recent? Are you still fearful? Now, you could be fearful for the rest of your life every day, even if it happens one time. But maybe the jury doesn't buy it if it was 20 years ago and you are now an adult and you were a child at the time. Right? Does that make sense? And I think that goes to the age-old question, can victims murder their offenders? And what draws the line? Because obviously, if these two are in immediate danger of being sexually assaulted, then you can use equal force to overcome that. The way that they were murdered, though, it does not seem like there was actual provocation. You come in with shotguns and you kill somebody. It seems like you took them by surprise. Shotguns from the back, so on and so forth. Now, the justification of, well, yeah, but I was abused as a child and it just was a passionate thing that it overcame me and I killed them. Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know as far as the defense or not. I guess the jury can make that decision. Maybe the jury finds that that is justified. Who makes that decision, right? And I think the issue with these two in their trial is the jury didn't get to make that decision because we now have more evidence. And so did they get a new trial? Are we going to see that during the Netflix documentary? I don't know. I'm seeing it in my head, these two going through this long court process and what comes out of it. Because we will probably get the full story during the Netflix documentary. Yeah, because that's a good question. Even if they did kill them and because they were sexually abused their entire life by their father, well, does that mean you get to kill somebody? Well, if it's in the moment, you're going to be suffering great bodily harm, typically, if you are being sexually assaulted, right? So you can use whatever means you have to protect yourself. And self-defense is a strong defense. Was this self-defense? Don't know. Was it justified notwithstanding self-defense? Don't know. But I want to know. I will be watching this for sure. Okay, let's keep it rolling.
During his time there, it was long after these incidents that José and Kitty were found lifeless in their luxurious mansion, and their lives were taken so brutally that their faces were completely unidentifiable. Police felt like it was the work of someone who wanted to take revenge, and that's why they went after business rivals initially. The brothers were really young, 18 and 21 when this happened, so the police obviously thought that they would be traumatized. But the brothers had enough energy left after ending their parents that they fled the crime scene and made up the whole story about coming from the movies and finding the bodies of José and Kitty just laying there lifeless. The police also, because of the previous success of season 1. Moreover, the news show...
No. Okay, so the fact that the two were shot in the face. Typically, when you shoot somebody in the face, and that's going to be hard to see that type of damage that you just inflicted to a family member, which goes to their defense. So the police agreed. The police said, no, it's not likely a family member because there was a really gruesome crime. And family members don't usually commit crimes like this. That changed. That's what the police believed. And then the prosecution switched and said, no. They did it. And so the police here felt the same way, that they thought, oh, it's unlikely because whoever did this shot them in the face. And that caused a lot of damage. So it was likely more of a revenge situation, which then goes back to, oh, could be their story, which is we have been being sexually assaulted by the father this time and we want revenge, and a lot of times people who are assaulted, they blame even the parent who was not the one who was responsible even more because they didn't do anything about it. They allowed the assault to happen and they didn't protect them from the harm. That could have been what happened here. The resentment could have built up that the mom didn't do anything, that she chose to look the other way and not even believe it. So our original question has been answered. I think everybody understands that these two killed their parents. And the question just really is, was that killing a justified killing? Because killing can be justified. The government does it every once in a while. They have a killing, depending on the state. Certain police officers have killings that are justified during the line of duty. That happens. So not every killing is justified, but the ones that are not are crimes. And that's what we're going to find out in the Netflix documentary. Was this justified? Was it a crime? Hopefully they answer that question. And we might actually hear a little bit more right here.
million, and the brothers spent almost $700,000 in just a few months after their parents lost their lives. It didn't seem like the brothers were in trauma at all. In fact, it felt like they were so happy and were on a picnic with all the lavish purchases of Rolex, Porsche, and designer clothes. They were spending the money recklessly without realizing that the police were paying attention to everything they were doing. This will result in long therapy sessions for Eric, and these sessions will play a really important role in the show, as Eric will soon confess that he's behind ending the lives of his parents. He'll also reveal that he wanted to rid of his mother of all the pain that she was bearing in her life. The therapist had no other choice but to secretly record all of this, and this is how the taped confessions of Lyle.
What pain was the mom bearing? Maybe this guilt of the father sexually abusing them? And maybe that's what this video said earlier about the Netflix documentary shining a light on Kitty's background and what Kitty was dealing with. She was a beauty queen, and then their mother, and then I guess taking it from her perspective. Could be.
Lyle also revealed that it wasn't just Eric who did it, but he was also a part of this entire plan. The therapist didn't immediately tell the police, and instead his girlfriend found out and reported to Beverly police, who then heard the confessions and were shocked. Both the brothers were soon arrested, and typically this would have been the end of their story, but there still was a lot to be uncovered. According to certain reports, the show will put their focus on the actual trial of the Menendez brothers, just like they did with Dahmer's show. The trial was broadcast to the entire nation.
The sons should do what the fathers say, and then they grow up and they become like the father.
It soon became more of a soap opera, had everything from drama to a rich family, to young boys, to a mystery that needed to be solved. So the Menendez case soon became a countrywide sensation, and everyone wanted to know what happened next. How the creators show this journey of two celebrity brothers turning into homicides is going to be epic, and it'll also depend upon the perfection of the screenplay. The show will also shed some light on the claims of the brothers that their father used to hit them and treated them badly since childhood.
Where we were wrong about that, it wasn't the guilt. And they were literally saying the mom was an abuser as well, which is new information to me. So they're saying that they were just getting abused from all different angles and snapped.
$5 million worth of insurance money, although the two brothers were soon indicted.
So now we're up to, what's 14.5? 19 million. The estate was 14 million. 5 million insurance money. That's the math I'm doing in my head. That's a lot. So these two were, I don't know, average Joes one day, multi-millionaires the next day. So they definitely had an incentive. And maybe police should have pieced that together a little quicker.
Evidence of the case has probably made the show even more interesting.
Recent evidence. Interesting. So here's a famous person. Why would he come out and say that their dad mistreated them and touched him inappropriately? I don't know. That's interesting evidence. That's new evidence. And that was somebody who was a singer that worked with their father.
He used that word?
Yes, he did. He wanted to know that if this happened to every kid.
It's still unclear if a Netflix show will contain the new information about José being less than kind, but we're surely going to see how the brothers went to the movies right after taking their lives of their parents, just so that they could have an alibi.
They needed an alibi.
Cover their tracks. There's a chance that we might also get to hear the statements of people who were close to the family.
Boom. They get a movie ticket that says, such and such time, we saw this long movie. This movie started at this time. Because if you think about it, 1989, it probably doesn't say the time that they got the ticket. It probably just says the movie time and who's going to be in there going, they showed up 20 minutes late.
Wasn't easy to be around, and he had complete.
You've seen this where men in prison get married, where there's women all over the country seeking out inmates to be their pen pals and form relationships. Yeah, that's what happened. So these two are in prison and they ended up getting married to somebody. I mean, each of them individually. Do you think that it's because the women who are contacting the prisoners know that these guys don't have nothing else to do? So they're very available to communicate. And isn't like this written, because that's why you're communicating mostly is through the written word. And so that causes the attraction because these men are forced to kind of open up through pen and paper. Mm-hmm. Because it's not what you would expect. You would not expect women to be interested in this, But it's clear that they are, because it does happen frequently where people develop relationships with people in prison, and then people get out of prison and they actually start relationships with these people after developing this love in prison. And if you haven't seen that, check that out, because that is pretty fascinating. It's there's Locked Up, which is the prison show, and then there's Love After Locked Up, which is like even better. Like Locked Up is great. You know, you can watch hundreds of hours of Locked Up and learn everything there is to know about the prison system, which I already have. But then there's like a few episodes of Love After Locked Up. That is magic. That is fireworks. Yeah, that is hilarious, where it's just like, how in the world did you guys fall in love? What are we doing? Like, this person was in there for horrible crimes, and you guys got married in the prison. They allow that. They allow the inmates to literally marry, and they come in and they have a ceremony, and they have to walk through. Yeah, you got to bring in the wedding ring. You got to bring in I was watching one, and one of the ladies brought in lotion, so she like was nice and looking good for her man. That's legendary. They're just happy to be getting married, because there's like, what are the chances of that? Because they're making this documentary with access to the actual murderers. They are actually talking to them. Yeah, and are they going to start out the story with them being victims or them being murderers? Because there's definitely two stories here. You know, you got their story, which is, hey, we were victims. And I think it's probably pretty good evidence from what I've seen that they were. But did that create a monster? Have you seen the show Making a Murderer? Because that show kind of showed how the system might create a murderer, how you have somebody who maybe was innocent of a crime, and that caused them to have a propensity that they didn't have before, going through and having traumatic experiences or whatever in the actual system, or learning how to commit crimes, or just being around the criminal system. I explained that terribly. But they were made into murderers because of their circumstances, because they were abused when they were growing up. Right. And when did they make this documentary? Because this evidence, did they have it? Did they not have it? I'm guessing they did. I'm guessing that Netflix feels like, hey, we've got the full story at this point, and so now we need to lay it all out there. Let us in the comments. Let us know in the comments. Let us in. Let us in. Man, the automatically generated subtitles. Lyle and Eric Menendez. You can definitely tell they're brothers. Convicted in 1996 of the murders of their parents, Jose and Mary Louise Kitty Mendez. During their trial, the brothers stated they committed the murders out of fear of their father killing them after they threatened to expose him for years of sexual, emotional, and physical abuse. But why did they kill him? Fear of their father killing them after years of emotional abuse. Now, you can see their mugshots on the right. They are taken in 2023, but this was not a current case, I don't believe. Wait, does it say that at the very top? Our American brothers who were convicted in 1996. Right at the very top. We are convicted. Jury convicted them in 1996 for murdering their parents. Mugshots, and those are the happiest looking mugshots. What is this? School picture day? Tried separately with one jury for each brother. However, both juries deadlocked, resulting in a mistrial. For a second trial, they were tried together by a single jury who found them guilty. Really? Interesting. So did both juries in the initial trials decide that they were justified for killing their parents, or they didn't know that or they couldn't find beyond a reasonable doubt that they actually killed their parents? So in a trial, do defendants typically have separate trials, or do they have trials all together? So joint trials are generally preferred when the charges against the defendant arise from the same events or course of conduct. This avoids duplicative evidence and testimony. So that goes to judicial efficiency. However, that has to be weighed. You think of the scales of justice. We have one scale that says judicial efficiency. We have a separate scale that says prejudicial to the defendant. Does one substantially outweigh the other? It may be prejudicial to the defendant if the two defendants are both accusing the other of the crime, which commonly happens. In fact, oftentimes, one defendant will work out a plea with the prosecution to testify against the other defendant. And that could be a plea deal for one of the defendants having a lower sentence and taking on less culpability because they're saying they were not the cause or the primary cause of the crime. And that is the interesting question for these two, is why was the initial trial bifurcated into two trials? And then the second trial for each of them was together. Did the courts decide that judicial efficiency was more important at that point? Yes, the judge typically can make that decision because the judges have this inherent ability to control litigation and control their calendar and control the flow, essentially, of justice. It was a mistrial for each of them because the juries were deadlocked in both of their cases, according to Wikipedia. A mistrial means that you're starting from scratch. In more cases, maybe not in every case, but my understanding is that the mistrial would restart the whole procedure. Yeah. So is it more siding with the prosecution if they are tried together versus separate? And I think in most cases, it is going to be beneficial, in my mind, to have separate trials because you have more control over the trial and less of an issue of the other story coming in and influencing your case. Now, what could also be an issue is you could have the trials bifurcated when it was originally one trial. So in that case, that may or may not be helpful. It might actually be problematic if you have to branch off into your own trial, because then you can't plea together. You're going to get your own plea if there's multiple defendants. Now, this is probably more of an issue when there's a bunch of defendants because they're going to try to want to wrap up all the cases at the same time. But if you get yours taken out, then you might not get to negotiate with everybody else. That can be a problem. Okay, so let's go through the background. José Enrique Menendez was born on May 6, 1944. José, I'm guessing, is the father, in Havana, Cuba. At age 16, shortly after the end of the Cuban Revolution, he moved to the United States. José attended Southern Illinois University, where he met Louise Kitty Anderson, 1941 to 1989. They were married in 1963 and moved to New York City, where José earned an accounting degree from Queens College. All right. Don't know if that's going to come up in the movie, but you know it now. The couple's first son, Joseph Lyle, who goes by his middle name, Lyle, was born January 10th, 1968 in New York. Kitty quit her teaching job after Lyle was born, and the family moved to New Jersey, where Eric Galen was born on November 27th, 1970 in Gloucester, I don't know what that is, Township. The family lived in Hopewell Township, and both brothers attended Princeton Day School. In the summer of 1976, Lyle and Eric's cousin, Diane Vander Molen, came to stay with them. She stated Lyle confessed to her that he was being sexually abused by his father. Vander Molen told Kitty what Lyle had said, but Kitty sided with her husband and said Lyle was lying. Vander Molen recalls that afterward, Kitty put Lyle upstairs, and that was the last Vander Molen heard of the claim. So who is Vander Molen? She is the cousin of Lyle and Eric. And she visited them and confessed, or Lyle confessed to her, that he was being sexually assaulted by his father. And this was 20 years before the murder. 10 years later, it's like every decade here, José's career as a corporate executive He joined the company then known as International Video Entertainment, took the family to Beverly Hills, California. The following year, Eric attended Beverly Hills High School, where he earned average grades but displayed a remarkable talent for tennis, ranking 44th in the U.S. as a junior. Wow. 44th. About 2 weeks before the murders, Eric and his friend Joyce entered the 1989 Boys National Tennis Championship, Boys Junior National Tennis Championship. Eric reached the second round of qualifying in the boys 18 singles, while Joyce reached the quarterfinals. So they did pretty good. Lyle attended Princeton University but was placed on academic probation for poor grades and was eventually suspended for plagiarism. So it sounds like Lyle was a great athlete, great tennis player. This is allegedly was molested by his father 10 years earlier, but failed out of school for academic problems. Plagiarism, that's going to get you kicked out of school. Okay. Crimes. This is what we're here for. On the evening of August 20th, 1989, Jose and Kitty were standing in the den of their Beverly Hills mansion when Lyle and Eric entered the den carrying shotguns. Jose was shot 6 times, including a fatal shot in the back of the head with a Mossberg 12-gauge shotgun. Kitty was 10 times in total shot. Before the fatal shot to her cheek, she was on the ground, slowly crawling and crying. Lyle ran to his car and reloaded before firing the fatal shot to her face. So it sounds like a slow and grueling murder where they were not, it was not a quick process. He had to go back to the vehicle, come back. And I think people, as far as getting shot, people think like, oh, you get shot one time, you're just dead. Sometimes it's not like that, where you are having to take multiple rounds and you're bleeding out, and that's what actually kills you. Gruesome. And with a shotgun, you're going to have like little bullets spread out, and they might not all hit you. So you might have, received some of the bullets and others spray and go past you. Immediately after the killings, both brothers remained in the house expecting the police to respond due to the noise of the gunshots. When the police arrived, the brothers told them that the killings had occurred while they were at a movie theater watching Batman and attending the Taste of L.A. So this is 1989. That's probably like a Michael Keaton Batman or something like that, or maybe the one with Arnold Schwarzenegger in it. Attending the Taste of L.A. festival. So that's probably a street festival. The police did not seek gunshot residue tests from the brothers, which would have indicated whether they had recently discharged a firearm. What? Nightmare on Elm Drive. Vanity Fair Beverly Hills claimed to have been suspicious of the Menendez brothers from the beginning, but there was no proof. Nothing to go on, but merely gut reactions. How do you not do gun residue on the 2 sons? Wow. Maybe it was not as common in 1989. Yeah. And shift 20 years later, police would have been knocking down their door trying to get them as the killer. Trying to do everything that they can to reach out and to contact them, and just assuming that they were the killer, because that's we have so much strong evidence that it's usually a family member. Yeah. And to either prove their innocence or not, you're going to have every doorbell on the neighborhood recording who's coming in and out of the neighborhood. But at this time, 1989, no Ring doorbells, no Blink cameras. Did the police find the shotguns? Because they say Mossberg was used, but did they find that out later, or did they know that immediately? A Mossberg is a type of shotgun. It sounds like the police really thought at the time that the brothers were not the killers. Otherwise, they did a really poor job. It seems like the cops did not think that the sons were suspects because they did not do any real investigation into them like they would typically do. gunshot residue evidence, looking into, where these guns came from or where they're connected to the sons. But that's probably what the documentary is going to go into. So that's what I'm excited about to watch, is to see what exactly the issue was. And I can just see it now. In the months after the killings, the brothers began to spend extravagantly on luxury items, businesses, and travel. Lyle bought Chuck Spring Street Cafe. Lyle bought Chuck Spring Street Cafe, a buffalo wing restaurant in Princeton, New Jersey, as well as Rolex watch and a Porsche Carrera. Ooh, that's fancy. Eric hired a full-time tennis coach and competed in a series of tournaments in Israel. The brothers eventually left the Beverly Hills mansion unoccupied, choosing to live in adjoining condominiums in nearby Marina del Rey. They also dined expensively and took overseas trips to the Caribbean and London. Collectively, they spent $700,000 before they were arrested. Family members later disputed a connection between their spending and the murder of their parents, claiming that there were no charges in the spending habits after the killings. At one point, they attended a New York Knicks basketball game, which became immortalized when they appeared courtside in the background of a Mark Jackson trading card. The New York Knicks is a basketball team. And Mark Jackson, I believe, was a point guard, and he was playing for the New York Knicks, and there they are on his trading card, sitting in the first row. Where did they get this money? Was it from their father, who was he a professor? He worked at this entertainment company, this video Hollywood entertainment company. So he was probably balling out. And the mom was a school teacher. That's where I was thinking professor. She was a school teacher, but then she stopped when she had children. So was it life insurance? Do they have a big old life insurance policy? But I don't know why they would think that would be a correlation from them spending extravagantly to... I see where they're going with this. So they're saying that it's likely that the brothers murdered their parents to get life insurance money, then they balled out. So that's what why else would you even bring that up? Because, who cares if they spent a bunch of money after their parents passed away? Unless that was the reason. Which reminds me of another case, because I was watching, I think it was Forensic Files, one of those shows. And people are just, the most likely thing is to kill somebody is for life insurance. It happens all the time. So you have people who, this guy on this Forensic Files is like, well, he killed one of his wives and then got life insurance. Totally got away with it. Another wife totally got away with it. And then I think somebody else, it was just like, how could they not put this together? It was, I can't remember the case, but who the guy was, but it's like, eventually they're like, come on, seriously? There's no way your wife could, die in a fire, and then the next wife die in a fire, and then every time you're taking out life insurance policies right before it happens. It's like, come on. But I'm guessing that's why they're saying that here. In the staircase, did he take out a life insurance policy? Yeah, I think you're right, because he was having financial issues, and that's what was one of the arguments in the staircase. So in August 1990, Judge James Albright ruled that tapes in the conversations between Eric and Oziel, I don't know who that is, were admissible evidence, since Oziel stated that Lyle threatened him and violated doctor-patient privilege. So that's interesting. So they're saying it's an exception to the hearsay or the doctor-patient privilege. During the early stages of the investigation, police tried to narrow their search to suspects who had motives to kill Jose and Kitty, and also investigated potential mob leads. Wonder where that came in. As the investigation continued, they began to suspect the brothers were the most likely perpetrators due to the obvious financial motive, so life insurance, and or maybe there's a large estate, and their exorbitant spending after the killings. I think that's garbage. That's a bad... If that's all you got, that's not good, because people spend money. You're just assuming them to be financially responsible? Come on. Look at this. In an attempt to get a confession from Eric, police arranged for his friend, Craig Signorelli, to wear a wire during a lunch with Eric at a local bar beachfront restaurant. When Signorelli asked Eric whether he had killed his parents. Eric denied it. Eric eventually confessed to his psychologist, Jerome Oziel, who then told his mistress, Judalon Smith. Oziel later broke up with Smith. So the psychologist told his mistress, "What is this, an HBO show or what?" Like, that's a crazy scenario. But anyways, Lyle was arrested on March 8th, 1990, and Eric turned himself in 3 days later after returning to Los Angeles from Israel. Both were held without bail and jailed separately. Now, we've already hit this part with the judge. So they came in, the tapes came in. So, man, I don't know why are you like, why are you recording these conversations? Is that a thing? Like, you go to the therapist and they want to record the whole conversation? Albright's ruling was appealed, after which the proceedings were delayed for 2 years. The Supreme Court of California ruled in August 1992 that most of the tapes were admissible, with the exception of the tape on which Eric discussed the murders. So that would be too prejudicial, because that would be like signed, sealed, and delivered if the jury heard that. After that decision, a Los Angeles County grand jury issued indictments in December 1992, charging the brothers with the murders of their parents. So once again, we're talking about prejudicial versus truth. Is it so prejudicial that it outweighs the jury knowing all the facts? And typically, it might seem weird, but if something in evidence is so powerful that it will persuade any juror that this person is completely guilty, then it might not come in, unless there's another reason for it to come in. Otherwise, it might not be relevant. Now, that seems surprising, but that's a real thing. The judges have to decide. Yeah, and that's the interesting part, because if there is a tape that this person said what he said, which was a confession, during the confidence of a psychiatric visit, then the judge has to decide. He made this statement thinking that it was going to remain confidential, that nobody was going to hear it. And we don't want to hear people's conversations that they have to their psychiatrist. Those conversations should all be private, and they shouldn't be brought out just because there's a charge, because we want to encourage people to be honest to their psychologists. Now, the other tapes came out for a reason, and that being that he threatened the psychologist. Now there's a crime that was committed, and you can then use some of these tapes, not the ones that are overly prejudicial, but the rest of the tapes, I don't know, to show that there was some kind of propensity. Now, that is kind of an interesting thing, and I hope they hit on that during the trial. This seems like kind of a legal, kind of, we're going kind of into more complex legal territory. Maybe we won't know this. Maybe they'll spare us this during the trial, but as a lawyer, it's kind of interesting for me. Let's just keep rolling with it. The Menendez case became a national sensation with court TV broadcast in the trial in 1993, represented by their defense lawyer, Leslie Abramson. That's a interesting name. I want to say Abrahamson, which cannot be right. Leslie Abramson. The brothers stated that they killed their parents out of fear for their lives after a lifetime of abuse at the hands of their parents, especially sexual abuse at the hands of their father, who was described as a cruel, perfectionist pedophile, which is also their mother. They said that there were, some sexual abuse. Which is, I wonder how often that is, where it comes from both parents. Was described as an enabling, selfish, mentally unstable alcoholic and drug addict who encouraged her husband's behavior and was also violent towards their brothers. So that's the interesting thing about this show, Monsters. Who's the monster? Look up Kitty. Who's the monster? Are they going to portray the children as monsters? Are they going to portray the parents as monsters? Is everybody a monster? Tune in and find out. As physical evidence, the defense presented a photograph of Lyle and Eric's genitalia allegedly taken by their father when they were seriously? Well, there you go. How did they not believe it? That's strongest evidence you can have. So the prosecution argued that the killings were done for financial gain. This theory was disputed by the defense team. which claimed that the brothers did not think they were getting an inheritance. See, a lot of this stuff sounds so goofy to me. Why would they not think they're getting an inheritance? Their dad is balling. So anyways, Lyle's prosecutor, Bosnich, I wish they had easier names, argued that men could not be raped because they lack necessary. What does that mean? This is sometimes Wikipedia. I don't even know. That doesn't make no sense at all. Who believes that? Okay, I'm just gonna keep going. Eric testified that a couple of weeks before the night of the killings, he told his brother about the sexual abuse he was experiencing, which led to several confrontations within the family. The brothers also testified that their father threatened to kill them if they did not keep their abuse secret. That sounds pretty plausible. They claimed the last confrontation happened inside their father's home on August 20th, 1989, a few minutes before Kitty and Jose were killed. Okay, so that's where they're saying the provocation came. That's where they're saying they used self-defense because they were just done taking it. Paranoid and afraid that they would be killed by their own parents, Lyle and Eric went outside and loaded their shotguns. Eric stated, as I went into the room, I just started firing. So now we can see why we're getting more of a defense, because they were in the heat of the argument right there. So many times they had felt fear, and now the dad had just threatened them, saying that he was going to kill them if they ever came out and said anything. Okay, we've already heard about the 2 deadlocked juries. The second trial was somewhat less publicized, in part because Judge Stanley Weisberg did not allow cameras in the courtroom. During the second trial, Weisberg, relying upon a legal decision by the Supreme Court in an unrelated case, limited testimony about the sexual abuse claims, and did not allow the jury to vote on the manslaughter charges instead of murder charges. Well, that's interesting. Why would you limit the sexual abuse claims? Yeah, interesting. Both brothers were eventually convicted on 2 counts of first-degree murder and conspiracy to commit murder. In the penalty phase of the trial, they were sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The jury noted the abuse defense was not a factor in the deliberations, but it decided not to impose the death penalty because both brothers had no prior criminal history of violence. However, unlike the juries in the previous trials, the juries in the penalty phase rejected the defense's theory that the brothers were killed their parents out of fear and believed that they committed the killings in order to inherit their father's wealth. So different trial, different outcome. During the penalty phase, Abramson apparently told defense witness William Vickery, maybe I say it, to edit his own notes. But the district attorney's office decided not to launch a criminal investigation into Abramson. Both brothers also filed motions for mistrial, claiming that they suffered irreversible damage in the penalty phase as a result of the possible misconduct and ineffective representation by Abramson. Okay, so Abramson was their attorney. On July 2nd, 1996, Weisberg sentenced the 2 brothers to life in prison without the possibility of parole to serve as consecutive sentences for the killing and charges of conspiracy to commit murder. The defense attorney had told a witness, it looks like, to edit their notes. William Vickery to edit his own notes. Okay, so that sounds like a lazy attorney, maybe. It's like, you should have edited the notes. Typically, what the court will allow is you to take notes with you to the stand. You can reference those. You can't read the notes, but if you need to go back to your notes to reference something or to, jog your memory, you can typically do that. Incarceration. As their pretrial detention, the California Department of Corrections separated the brothers and sent them to different prisons. Since they were considered to be maximum security inmates, they were segregated from other prisoners. They remained in separate prisons until February 18th, when Lyle was moved to Mole Creek State Prison to the Richard J. Donovan Correctional Facility, where they were housed in separate units. Eric also spent some time at Pleasant Valley Prison in Coalinga, California. On April 4th, 2018, Lyle was moved in the same housing unit as Eric. Interesting. So way into 2018, they're back again. They must have earned that. So reuniting them for the first time since they began serving their life sentences nearly 22 years earlier. The brothers burst into tears and hugged each other at their first meeting in the housing unit. The unit where they are housed is reserved for inmates who are agree to participate in education and rehabilitation without creating disruptions. Yeah, so they are like in a privileged type of unit. Let's just get to the chase, okay? In May 2023, the brothers filed documents seeking a new hearing based on the newly discovered evidence purporting that showed that their father had also molested boy band member Roy Rossello, specifically on April 18th, 2023, on the segment of the Today Show about the upcoming docuseries. Whoa. Rossello stated that he had been drugged and raped by José Menendez when he was visiting that's about as serious as it gets, New Jersey home at the age of 14. Marriage and interviews in prison. Right. So the other video said that he was inappropriately touched, but that sounds a lot different. All right. So marriages and interviews in prison. On July 2nd, 1996, Lyle married Anna Erickson at a ceremony attended by Amundsen, which is the attorney that they didn't like, I thought. But anyways, and his aunt Marta Menendez, officiated by Judge Nancy Brown. They divorced on April 1st, 2001. They didn't work out. After Erickson discovered that Lyle was allegedly cheating on him with another woman, in November 2003, Lyle married Rebecca Sneed at a ceremony in visiting area of Mule Creek State Prison. They had known each other for around 10 years before the engagement. All right, let's just skip on ahead here. An interview with People's Magazine, and this is My Life with Eric Mendez. It says, not having sex in my life is difficult, but it's not a problem for me. I have to be emotionally attached and not just attached to Eric. My family does not understand. When it started to get serious, some of them just threw up their hands. Can't imagine why. Okay, anyways, Saccoman, or however you say it, also stated that she and her daughter drive 150 miles every weekend to visit Eric. This is what I'm talking about, is this the love after lockup situation. It's just wild. And that her daughter refers to him as Earth Dad, as opposed to probably her dad maybe passed away. So discussing his life sentence, Eric stated, "Tammy is what gets me through. I can't think about the sentence. When I do it with great sadness and a primal fear. I break into a cold sweat. It's so frightening. I just have to come to terms with it. I just haven't come to terms with it. Wow." And I think it's been they've been in there for a long time. In 2010, A&E released Miss Menendez, a documentary about Saccoman. Really? So there's already been a documentary about Saccoman. In late 2017, A&E aired a 5-part documentary titled The Menendez Murders. Eric tells all, in which Eric describes via telephone the murders and the aftermath. The series also shows never before seen photos and new interviews from prosecutors, law enforcement, close family members, and medical experts. Holy cow, look at all this popular culture. I've never even heard about this, but look at all this that we have here. Films. Wow, 1994, 2017. Menendez Brothers were featured in Lifetime television series. Wow. This is incredible. Then in the Netflix The 90s show, Red made a reference to the Menendez brothers while talking to his wife, Kitty. Coincidentally, Kitty, also the nickname of their mother. Okay, so yeah. And you know what's kind of interesting is I can just hear Red saying Menendez brothers for some reason. It's like I've heard that episode or watched that episode. Parody and dark comedy. Saturday Night Live, Married with Children. Okay, others. The Menendez brothers are seen in the background of the 1991 NBA Hoops Mark Jackson basketball card. I don't know why that makes that big of a deal about that, but that happened. eBay began terminating auctions in which the brothers are mentioned in the listing. The New York Knicks played 28 games during the period in which Menendez brothers went on a spending spree after the murders. Some eBay sellers have continued to sell the card and have also altered the images accompanying to the listing so that the Menendez brothers are neither mentioned or seen in the photos. If you want to see more videos from Lawyer Cliff, go ahead and click the video right over my shoulder, and True Crime continues.